So this morning we're gonna start the dough for 1 loaf of sourdough bread that we can bring to dinner for a friend that's who invited us to dinner tonight, and also 1 pizza dough. Not making too much because we're about to go on holidays. So this is kind of like a cheat sheet that I have put together, and it basically show the size of loaf that I wanted, 603 gram, and what each ingredient is, the basic 5 ingredient, and also the pizza for the pizza dough. This is for 12-inch pizza, what the basic ingredient is. Since I'm doing 1-and-1, again, I cheated a little bit, and not cheated by prep, and basically figure out what's the total amount of the basic 5 ingredient I need. So the first thing I'm gonna do is thin out the starter with some water, and then at the same time I'm gonna measure out the flour separately, because I'm experimenting with more than just plain white wheat flour for the dough. I'm gonna try today with some whole grain in there, and then also some rye flour. I think just to start slowly, I'm just gonna do 10% of the whole grain and 10% of the rye. You want to be careful because whole grain can get really dry, so maybe just try a little bit at a time. And I think 10% is a good start for that for me. So I'm going to now get the starter ready. This is my mixing bowl. A scale is important to have because you want to do everything by measurement. So okay, now this thing is 0, okay, with the bowl in it. This is that same Chicago sourdough starter that Emery's brother started and we brought back from the US. So I want to have 165 gram of this, and then 260 gram of water. I think I may even put the water in first so the starter doesn't stick to the bottom as much. It's easier to work with. So I need 260 gram. Okay, now we need 165 gram of starter. Zero that out. 165 gram. Okay, so 165 gram. So I'm just gonna mix this up a little bit. It's just easy for me to use the chopstick as far as it's thin, and I don't get a lot of leftover on the spoon or a spatula. So we're gonna add some oil in here. Oil is 26 gram of oil. The oil will keep the bread moist and soft. Okay, so I'm gonna set this aside right now. The last ingredient is the bread flour and then the salt. So I'm gonna pre-mix the bread flour first. So the total flour is 520 gram. So I'm gonna do 10% of the whole wheat. So I need about 52, approximately 50, don't have to be exact, 52 gram. You really have to experiment with this because each type of flour and grain, they absorb water differently. So you gotta have to, I'm still experimenting with it. And I'm gonna do about 52 grams of rye. So 53 right now, so I need to about 105. So you know what, I'm gonna try a little bit of semolina in here also too. Semolina will give it more chewy consistency. So I'm gonna do again 10% of semolina. So 170 now, 107 right now, so I'm gonna go about 160 total. Another 53 of the semolina. Just experimenting. We don't know how it turns out, but if it doesn't turn out properly, it only cost me about $1, so it's no big deal. Experiment. So about 160. Now the main bread flour. Total is gonna be 520, so I need about, I just gotta just add until I hit 520 on here. You want to be precise, but if you're just a little bit off, it's not that bad. Especially after you bake for a while, you know what the consistency of the bread is as far as when you touch it and feel it. Then always make sure you let your bread soaks up the moisture first before you try to add liquid or flour, because the texture changed just with about half an hour of just autolyze just sitting there. That's where the moisture get absorbed by the flour. So it's going to mix this together so that all the different kind of flour that we have in there is mixed well. And then of course the final ingredient we're gonna have is salt. But what I'll do is I will not add the salt right away. I'll wait till after the dough has the yeast have a chance to work, because I believe, just like preserving food, having the salt in there too early may inhibit the growth of the yeast and all the bacteria that make the dough sour. So I'm gonna let that work a little bit and then add the salt in later. Okay, so this flour is ready. I'm gonna measure up the salt. The salt requires 12 grams. I'm just gonna add a little bit more than 12. I'm gonna add a little bit more than 12 because I like it a little bit salty, maybe about 15 total. Okay, it's 15. Now I'm gonna add a little bit of water. Just gonna add a few gram, just a few drop of water and make that's enough. Just let this sit aside. So again, this is the starter with the oil and the water. Just gonna add some flour in. I'm just gonna mix this just so that the liquid and the flour are all married up. And then I'm gonna let it sit for 30 minutes before I try to even do anything with it, because the flour needs to have a chance to soak up the liquid. And you'll be amazed that after 30 minutes how this really the texture, where initially I think they normally feel pretty dry, but after about 30 minutes it'll feel a lot wetter, just because the flour have a chance to absorb, and also the gluten have a chance to get hydrated and relax, and you can work the gluten. And then we cover it with plastic. In this case right here, I just use a shower cap, reusable, and just let it sit. Okay, so it's been about half an hour. We're going to do the stretch and fold. I just want to scrape some of this off the edge first. I can tell already that, especially underneath, that the flour has been hydrated and is getting a little bit smoother structure. So I just want to lump this together, get all the liquid in there. Gonna be so. I'm just going to grab this right here on one end, stretch it out, and just fold like this. Just stretching those gluten and also mixing at the same time. Stretch and fold. So this part is not very hydrated, I can tell. Kind of lumpy. It's okay. It's gonna get really smooth, as you'll see later on in the future. Stretch and fold. I think I'm gonna go ahead and add the salt in here now. Just mix up the salt a little bit. I'm just gonna pour it on the side, and so I can, with my stretch and fold, I can work the salt into the dough. I think it's still kind of wet, so I'm just gonna still stir right now with my spatula. Stir. It's like this is still mixing right now. Let it relax. We'll do more stretch and fold later on. Let's make sure that all the flour have access to the moisture. And then we're gonna let it rest again so that it have a chance to absorb the moisture. And I'm gonna cover it up again after I wash my hand. Okay, it's another 30 minutes, so we're gonna try to stretch and fold again. So let's scrape off some on the side. It's getting more moist, more pliable now. And then I'm just gonna pick up the whole dough and just try to combine a little bit more. Make it easier. Now it's nice, a little bit smoother, you can tell. So all I'm gonna do is just gonna pick up one side, stretch them like this, and fold. Turn the bowl 90 degrees, stretch, and fold. Not only is it stretching the gluten out, working the gluten a little bit. It's also adding air pockets in here, big air pockets by folding, and also slowly help combine the ingredients. Okay, we're going to turn again. You can see the dough, I think from last time, looks like it has already puffed up a little bit, but it's still on the rising process. I'm going to first wet my hand, do the stretch and fold again. So this is a nice consistency. See how it's more smooth. So stretch and fold, turn 90 degrees, stretch and fold. And then we're just going to leave it alone, cover it and leave it alone again, and then we'll continue to do this every half an hour or so. Before I do anything else, I'm just going to prepare the Benetton sourdough loaf by putting some rice flour on the liner for the Benetton, so that way the rice flour make it not stick to the liner. We'll put a little bit of oil in this bowl for the pizza. Put some oil in the bowl, oil it real well, and I'm going to divide the dough and put 380 grams in the heat. So let me zero my scale. So this is the big dough. Use my scissors to try to cut the dough, make it easier. I think about 380, about this much. 315. I just want to be precise because that affects how thick the pizza dough is, and we like our dough, so 378 is close enough. So I'm gonna just prepare this dough. Just gonna roll it a little bit like this so that it'll be nice round ball. So let it rise a little bit. In about half an hour, we will make a pizza out of this right here. Okay, I'm gonna dust my board with some flour. First, I found that using a sifter save me some flour. I don't use too over dust it too much. So I'm just gonna do really lightly. Don't want to overwork the dough, and I'm just gonna do that stretch and fold. Turn it, put a little flour on it, stretch and fold. The more you work it, the finer the little hole is, but I like my bread with a lot of the big airy hole in there. Stretch and fold. Stretch and fold. Now we're ready to put the bread shape to a loaf and then put in the Benetton. So for this, just gonna put a little bit of flour. It's pretty much the same thing, except we're just gonna be stretching it and folding it in third. So stretch this and fold this in third. Press it, make this good. Stretch this and fold this in third. And then now for the final fold, I'm going to stretch this and fold it about third. And then for the last part, I'm just gonna roll it over and make sure that the seam goes to the very end. And make a ball out of it. Put a little bit of flour. Now this is the part we want to put some tension on the surface. So basically, this move is basically you turn and you pull the dough towards you so that you have a nice top surface of this dough ball. Now the bottom of the dough, you look at it, it's going to have all these cracks inside, and they will split apart if it's too dry. So I normally just stuff it in my finger and just like push in the middle so it's kind of nice seam. And then another trick, I use a scraper like this, and I just kind of like walk it around like this to tuck the underneath. Okay, again, the bottom, all these seams right here, you want to fold them in. Sometime when you have too much flour on the board, they separate. So I'm just going to use my thumb to tuck it in. Make sure that don't worry about it. You're gonna have a little split once in a while. It's okay. It's not gonna affect the bread too much. Okay, now after the bread is pretty much nice and round, the dough, I'm just going to put it in the Benetton and let it proof some more to about double the size right now. You notice that again, I didn't knead it too much because I don't want all those nice airy bubbles to become little bubbles. I just gonna put it in here, upside down. Again, twist. Just make sure that those seams are all tucked in. And then we just cover it and we just let it proof for another hour or so until it doubles in size. And that's it. 4.5 hours or so. The Dutch oven's been preheated in the oven for at 450 degrees. And I just turned it down to 400 when I put it in. So first, I think this is, I found that using a plate is pretty helpful to turn this over. And if there's too much of the rice flour, you can dust it off. So the next thing is we're going to score it. This is called a lime or lame. You can buy this on the internet for, I don't know, $8-9. I just use the old toothbrush handle and just put a couple screws in and just use razor blade. The idea is you want to cut it open so that when it expand, the oven spring has somewhere to go and also moisture escape. Otherwise, it will just explode out of somewhere that you don't expect it to go. Just make some basic simple cut about maybe 1/4 inch deep into it. And whatever cut you want is up to you. But you can make sure, I think, so that you don't drag the dough around too much, you cut with pretty quick, snappy cut. So I'm gonna give it a try here. That'll be a really good cut. It'll be snappy. There you go. So we got our basic score. Now I'm gonna put it in the Dutch oven. So this Dutch oven is nice and hot, preheated. Gotta be pretty careful. And I'm just gonna drop this in just like that. And that's it. And then cover it back up. And then it's gonna go in the oven at 400 degrees for 20 minutes. And then with the lid on. All right, it's 20 minutes. Now it's time to take the lid off the Dutch oven. Put it back up, and then 20 more minutes with the lid on. Another 20 minutes. So now I'm just gonna take it out of the Dutch oven and put it directly on the rack for another 20 minutes. Actually only add another 15 minutes because it's got pretty dark already. And this looks like it is ready. So the bread just out of the oven is on the cooling rack. You want the bread to cool at least like 30 minutes until it's completely cold before you cut into it, unless you plan on eating the whole thing. If you cut too early, like right now, some part of it may be like still sticky and jelly like inside because it's still cooking. But if you don't plan on eating the whole thing at the same time and you cut it into while it's still warm, then the bread will dry out after that. So my suggestion is, unless you're going to eat the whole thing right away, you still need to let it wait probably 10-15 minutes so that bread is cooked all the way through. But if you're gonna knock it at the same time, wait at least 30 minutes until the bread is totally cool before you cut into it, so it'll stay crispy on the outside and soft on the inside after you cut into it. Now, since we use some of the starter, I need to feed my starter, replenish it back. My starter normally is at 320 grams. So since I use about 165, about 160, I'm going to feed it back to the original 320. But for this, I'm going to use just plain flour. No need to use bread flour. Let me zero that. Because I use about 165, 160, I'm going to put 80 grams of flour back in. about half of what I use. So I'm put 80. Okay, so 80 grams of flour, equal amount by weight of liquid of water. Okay, wonderful. And I'm just gonna mix this up. I keep my starter in the refrigerator during the week because I don't bake every day, and I found that by putting it in the refrigerator, I only have to feed it about once a week versus every day if I leave it outside. And the night before I bake, so for example, last night, I take it out of the refrigerator, feed it, fed it, and then just let it sit outside on the counter. And this morning, and then I found that that works very, very well for me. Now the starter is already, I fed it. I'm gonna put the lid back on. I'm gonna put it back in the refrigerator.